Hi, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of Dave and Nikki Talk. I think that is the final title that we have creatively decided on. Today, we are very excited to meet Ben Lillenthal and Lou Guercia, respectively CEO and COO of ScreenMeet. ScreenMeet is a company that was founded a few years back as an online meeting and customer support mechanism or solution, and they have since grown and recently launched their newest module of ScreenMeet Live right in the midst of the pandemic, which has, I guess, inadvertent, very well been timed to help all of us better address all of the customer service woes that we have and just the collaboration issues in general that we're all facing as we all work remotely. So, Ben and Lou, thank you for joining us today.
So, Dave, Nicole, thanks very much. ScreenMeet got started based on my understanding of the collaboration market, circa 2010, 2012, where I was the general manager for a pretty nice sized business at GoToMeeting. Like I said, I had sold them a company that was the audio conferencing platform. Grew it to about $25 million as a standalone business unit, and then decided I was, ready to go do something else. What I would say, unique insight from being sort of an insider in the industry was all of the online collaboration products, while they were SaaS, they weren't cloud. And so that's kind of a minor distinction, but it's enough to be an insight. And so what we did in starting ScreenMeet was we built a cloud native screen sharing platform, which meant that for the end user, you could do everything in the browser. And so why is that important? Well, I mean, I'll have to tell you, cloud is taking over. The cloud-based version of the thing generally wins. And so our first product leveraging that core engine was remote desktop takeover. So if I want to go and fix your computer, I can now just log into a website, send you a link, and sort of have access to your desktop. That in and of itself, we thought was pretty clever, but then it got much smarter when we started to integrate it into the existing CRM platforms. So leveraging things like Salesforce and ServiceNow and Microsoft Dynamics, not just for the workflows, but for the OAuth, so you didn't have to create a separate account. And then after you went and did your work to, delete software on Dave's computer so he could boot up faster, all of the session data was also logged back to the case so that the next agent who went in would see what had happened, or the business unit manager could get some sort of quick analytics on how many sessions used remote support and how long did it take, and is that a good or a bad tool for us to have in our toolbox.
So Ben, you brought up an
so that was
interesting
the
point.
genesis of the company.
Sorry, so Ben, you brought up an interesting point about cloud and that distinction. Can you sort of go into that a little bit quickly?
Yeah, sure. So, GoToMeeting, top 5 SaaS company in the world in the early to mid 2000s. So what did that mean? It meant that you have software on your computer, I have software on my computer, and we use the internet to send data back and forth. When those companies were started, and I know because I, built some of the technology that they used, servers were incredibly expensive, bandwidth was expensive, AWS didn't exist. So the goal in designing those systems was to minimize the amount of compute and minimize the amount of bandwidth that you used on the server, and try and do as much on the desktop, because that's where the cheap computing was and you didn't have to pay for it. Fast forward to 2012 when I left GoToMeeting, and guess what? AWS was up and running, Google Cloud, Azure were just getting started, but it was incredibly cheap to rent servers and buy bandwidth. So if you were going to build enterprise applications, where would you build them? You'd build them cheaply by renting servers at a data center and seeing how much of the computing could you do there. And then for the end user, you wanted it all to be in the browser. So again, it's sort of that next kind of turn of the crank of making all this stuff sort of just work seamlessly. And then because we built it native in the cloud, you inherit all the benefits of 15 globally deployed data centers and redundant, fault-tolerant failover and all that stuff that you literally used to have to spend millions and millions of dollars architecting with like big Sun servers. You just get for free. So that's why, obviously, I'll tell you, there's been this rush of innovation and all these incredible cloud companies like Okta and Slack and all that stuff are getting built very cheaply. And so we sort of leverage that model to sort of attack this category, if you will.
Ben, you talk about the rush of innovation, and that was the case even pre-COVID, which is obviously what everyone talks about today, because that's the reality that we're all living. When it comes to your business and kind of bringing all the foundational aspects around data and technology to life, can you or Lou speak to some of the use cases or industries that are kind of accessible for someone to kind of better understand what your company does, like someone who might not know the technology but actually benefits from what you guys provide? Yeah,
thanks. So when we built the platform and sort of built the first application, which was remote desktop takeover, we had to deploy a global network of real-time communication servers, because when you're working on somebody's desktop, it's got to seem like real time. If they're in Bangladesh and you're in Bangalore, or you're in Boston and they're in Bahrain. So we have this global footprint of real-time servers. And then as we move from sort of desktop takeover, which is really kind of a sort of techie enterprise thing, obviously there's some big consumer brands doing it, like people who sell laptops. We moved into co-browse, which is basically anybody with a website who is having a problem servicing a customer, you could leverage our real-time platform to see what they were doing and help them either with a lightweight SaaS application, such as filing taxes, or with an e-commerce checkout flow. So that obviously has relevance today as more and more transactions move online. And then sort of for us, the final piece was adding live voice and video. So from your browser, whether you're on desktop or mobile, you can not only see what they're doing on the website, you can actually see them or have them use their phone to show you something that they would like you to help them with. So industries that are able to take advantage of real-time voice and video embedded directly within their CRM are retail, consumer packaged goods, financial services, health and life sciences, anybody who's doing kind of field services. Today we have literally at my house, the ADT guys here installing an alarm. In the future, I could probably self-install using my phone, and he could be sitting in his truck just telling me what to do. So, we think that sort of this digital engagement segment of the market that we're in, things just got accelerated a decade or two because of COVID. Yeah, right? Every industry is going to be transforming itself digitally now because they have to.
Yeah, and I can imagine in regards to different verticals, right? Obviously, we see healthcare getting hit right now, right, as they're on the front lines. And so, are you seeing any significant increase in like telehealth use cases with ScreenMeet?
Yeah, I mean, we haven't, that wasn't a market that we were focusing on. Mm-hmm. But I'm sure telehealth is going through the roof. For us, retail and CPG, as well as financial services, seem to be the ones that are sort of first movers.
Yeah. Let me add on to that. So part of our strategy, I think, for ScreenMeet has been not only to leverage the CRM platforms that are used by mid to large size enterprises globally in every possible industry segment, but also to think about how we could provide some connecting tissue, if you will, that last mile of communications capability prior to and right now during this COVID period of time that we're in, to help them to better digitally engage. And so what we have tried to do is look to partners like Salesforce and ServiceNow and Microsoft to see, well, where are their go-to-market efforts most focused? And then we make those people within those companies who are in sales and product management and marketing and strategy aware of what we do. And then they say, oh, wow, we want to put a lot of heat and light right now within retail and consumer packaged goods. And so then we're brought in to some of the largest companies, brand names that we all know, in a way that's a lot easier for us to do than if we were doing it on our own. So we're technologists. We're also thinking about the go-to-market in a way so that we provide a win to these big ecosystem partners who in turn know their enterprise customers better than we ever possibly could. And so we're sort of going to wherever their selling motion is. And right now it's in those industries that Ben just described.
Yeah, interesting. Now, I wonder too, with a service like ScreenMeet, there are obvious categories of use cases, scenarios for support, methods for, to enhance the customer experience. But have there been any sort of super cool use case scenarios, especially during this pandemic, but in general, that you're like, oh, I never thought of that one?
I mean, I would say probably the coolest one so far is a big insurance carrier in Asia that did all their business face to face. And so, I'd sit down with you and over coffee, we'd go through your life insurance policy and maybe you would sign on my iPad and we'd be done. And so now they want to use ScreenMeet for like 50,000 insurance agents. And they only want to do it, like 3 times a month, right?
Yeah.
Because it takes a couple of calls to get through the application. But so I thought that was kind of a cool, here I am sitting in my home in Kuala Lumpur and you're in Bangkok and we're filling out life insurance stuff.
Yeah.
And at the other end of the spectrum of, what might be a transaction driven type of business would be a beauty products company who typically sells in a department store, and those are shut down now, and there will be a long tail of a lack of willingness to go back into that retail environment just because it is never going to be the same. And so you start thinking about a beauty products company using their beauty advisors who are now working from home, not able to go into the retail store, and still able to escalate a web-based chat on their website to engage with customers and prospects, retail, just using their mobile device or laptop, where there's no personal identifiable information like mobile phone numbers given, email addresses. It's just very fluid, and it helps the sales process. And we're able to do that. And that's, I think, remarkable. And it will be something that will become more the norm. I would just wanted to add one thing, that when Ben and I met, it was either 2004 or 2005. He was running VAPS, that IP conferencing company, and I was running Web Dialogues, which was a screen sharing company. We both met when we were working with Skype. And of course, now Skype is part of Microsoft. But back in those days, 15 or so years ago, there was a lot of question about, well, will it be okay to use web conferencing? Will it be something that we can do safely for board meetings and so forth? and when you fast forward 15 years, isn't it amazing that now Google Meet is actually part of Gmail? So it's just to the point where the platforms are so trusted, the security layers, the distribution is so powerful that these types of tools just become part of what we do. So, we see that extending into the future in literally every market segment out there.
I mean, speaking of security and just the massive uptick in the amount of information that we're all consuming and distributing at large, have you guys encountered any concerns on behalf of your enterprise clients or their customers about their personal data being subjected to infiltration? Or a lot of our discussions that Dave and I have had in these past with our past guests have been about that topic of security. So it's almost kind of like a go-to topic that we have to ask. And you guys are unique in that you've launched this new live capability and that you span multiple verticals. So just kind of curious to hear your take on that.
Yeah, no, I can take that. And also just from I did put a link into the chat if you just want to click on and sort of just see the experience. Because we leverage the platform, whether it's Salesforce, ServiceNow, Microsoft Dynamics, to do the actual write the data about the session, the data at rest is as secure as anything that lives in your CRM platform. During the actual real-time session, we use TLS, we use sort of all the standard encryption in the browser. So the data in transit is as secure as whatever your e-commerce credit card checkout flow is. So we've intentionally built the product to leverage all of the third-party systems that are already in place. So there's not very many new asks from us when we go through kind of InfoSec reviews or anything like that. Additionally, and very early on, we got a SOC 2 audit. So we deliver sort of our SOC 2 report to our customers. We're probably the smallest company in the history of tech to sort of be SOC 2 compliant. But when you're dealing with the largest enterprises on the planet, these things are table stakes. So thank you. I mean, it's something we addressed up front, both early in deal cycles and very early in the company.
Yeah, I think that'll be really comforting for a lot of people to hear, because I think we kind of get scared as consumers into, well, if I plug into this new technology or this new company that I don't know anything about, will I get quote unquote Zoom bombed? And I say that as we're using the Zoom interface. So it's no knock on that particular institution, but health of not only our physical health, but health of our data and our privacy seems to be the most immediate, top of mind thing for people.
Well, and that's kind of why we like our approach, where you want to embed these capabilities into your existing workflows with your customers. Right. So you already chat with them, and now maybe I'll just do voice and video too in the context of my secure CRM platform, as opposed to, I'll do it on Zoom, and then, I'll just make a note that this time I got Zoom bombed. Oh, that's annoying. Here, you're going to have a secure experience inside your trusted platform, and all the data will be logged.
Yeah, exactly. And it's more in context, right? It's in context engagement. Yeah, you're right.
And there's no software, right? It just click a button and it works on your phone or on your desktop. And then when your shopping experience is over, it's done, right? You don't have an app there that you have to then go clean up or worry about.
So to pivot to, you guys have obviously just launched your ScreenMeet Live and you're well on your way with creating viable use cases with that. Do you kind of have a lens as to what's in the future for not only ScreenMeet, but your perception of how I don't want to say the world at large, that's too big of a question, but how, virtual and remote work will factor into, what ScreenMeet's future plans are?
Yeah, I mean, I read, or I used to read a lot of dystopian sci-fi, like Neuromancer and Snow Crash and William Gibson and that kind of stuff. And unfortunately, it feels like that's where we're headed. I mean, and I would say, to Lou's point, what we're seeing from the market is name brand retailers, name brand, beauty products, name brand professional services folks are looking at us or products like us to replace in-person experiences. And so once that happens, does the tide go, come back in? Yes, but does it come, but will this replace 20% or 30% of all in-person interactions? I mean, right now it's replacing 100% of it. So it just seems like, to me, the high water mark, it'll go down a little bit, but there'll be still much more of this real-time digital engagement stuff going on.
This is the catalyst that will drive that transformation much more, in a much more accelerated way. And it's in just about every industry that you can imagine. And so we're playing a very important part, because, Dave, to sort of riff off of the word that you use, like in the context, and that's really what we're doing. We're giving the ability to contextually escalate from one channel, which could be a chat or an SMS, into a business, and then based on the content of that, whether it's for sales or there's a real need to support a customer who's having a big problem, to be able to do that safely with no risk to privacy, and escalate that all in the context of that event and that underlying CRM, and leave no traces. That's better for the business, because they're capturing all that interaction. They have the ability to leverage all the data that comes from that to improve other self-service capabilities that they may have. And, once it works for customers and prospects and companies alike, then when things do hopefully get more normal, it'll be more of a hybrid environment. And technologies like ours and many others will have kind of hastened a transformation using these types of digital engagement capabilities, right? And that's what we're just playing a really fun role in trying to help what is a very difficult time.
I mean, different conversation whether that's good or bad for the world.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, but seriously,
my personal value judgment on that's different than my take on where the demand is and will the world use more of this stuff.
No, yeah, but
I think overall, though, Lou hit on some. I'm trying to distill down all the input that Dave and I have been aggregating, not only in our professional lives, and this is semi-professional lives. We're doing this half for fun, half for work, but it seems to come down to privacy, automation, and artificial intelligence, or just the ability to predict, I guess, is better than artificial intelligence, say, 'cause that kind of gets a little too like a Will Smith movie. But those are like the themes that seem to arise time and time again, and that you guys are really anchoring your product in like the vision of where ScreenMeet is going. So I think that's really cool.
Yeah, I would say we're the non-artificial intelligence thing. We're the, hey, if the chat bots, if you get stuck in the IVR and you want to star out to actually talk to a real person, that's what we are. We're the, how do you get to a person fast, easily, and then be done in context, to Dave's earlier point.
Yeah, and to do it in a way where you may not have that robust telephony infrastructure as you would normally have if you were in the big call center, right? Where, Ben described the big opportunity that we have in Asia working through agents. Well, they're no longer able to be face to face. And in some cases, they don't have that telephony infrastructure that they can rely on. So they're having to use their own personal devices. Yeah. And so we give them an ability to, without compromising any of that personal information, to still communicate in the way that's going to make the most sense for their customers and also for their business. So it's early, as you know, the ScreenMeet Live product was just released last week, but the level of interest that we're getting is, and obviously it's driven by the most difficult situation any of us have had to think about in our lifetime, because it's literally affecting almost everybody in the world that has to adapt. And so we're just kind of following the force of what's going on with some of these big partners who see value in what we're doing, and they're very focused on wanting to deliver value to their customers now, even if that means not selling them more of what they make. But they just want to be that trusted advisor, and they want to bring value to their customers, whether it comes from them or one of their partners. And so we feel like we can play a role in helping companies better communicate and support their customers and their prospects.
Absolutely, and we'd definitely love to have you guys come back in a couple months, just sort of share some of those best practices, right, and experiences, and how your maybe advice, recommendations, has changed over the past few months, even to now, and then in a couple of months from now. That'd be interesting to hear.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, no, we would love that. And I mean, but it is wild to think I'm not going to go into a store until who knows when, Instead, I'm going to schedule an appointment online and have someone walk me around and show me the furniture, and then I'll show them what my living room looks like, and then they'll ship me a couch.
Yeah,
I mean, that's science. That was science fiction, and now that's like literally what people are talking about.
Those are the conversations that we're having daily now.
Interesting.
With big brands. So time will tell. We'd love to come back and tell you.
Yeah, no, that would be great. It would be awesome, whether or not it's in the form of kind of like a true case study, like someone who would actually be willing to give like I don't want to say a testimonial, that seems too salesy, but kind of speak to their experience, and anything that like kind of brings all of this to life. Dave and I have found it makes our lives as analysts a whole lot easier. It's just a natural translation vehicle. So, thank you guys for kind of laying the foundation, and I wish you the best of luck with the launch of ScreenMeet Live, and we'll be in touch again real soon.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ben and Lou.
Take care.
Great. Nice to meet you all.
Bye. Bye.